Alright, hey guys. It's been a while, I know. I've been trying to get this review out for a few days. Been a little bit busy. Forgive me for that. So here we are, John Wick, Parabellum. Now just gonna go straight into the review of this film. It's a good film. Not the greatest film, but a really good action film. So once again, if it's your first time, welcome, 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 welcome. And without further ado, let me just proceed. I'm going to tell you, in case you guys have not read the title, that this is a spoiler review. So, spoiler alert once again. As for those of you who don't mind spoilers, you can still watch this because the story of this film is not really the most important thing. So even if you hear my review, there will be still a lot of things that I can't tell you about, such as the amazing action sequences of this film. So first thing first, really big props to the choreographers of this film. My God, the action was amazing. The impact of the visuals, the choreography, the atmosphere, the intensity of every scene in this film was really, really nice to see. Keanu Reeves, he I think he put his heart and soul into this. It was really intense. You can feel most of the action. It feels very realistic. And then, of course, there are some scenes where you can see certain flaws, like a punch and a kick, like that's about to land. You can see it kind of like waiting to land. And then sometimes there's like a mistiming between the how can I put it, attackers. Like one guy is clearly waiting for the other guy to get hit before he goes in. So these things you will get to see several times because this is a very big film where there's so much action going on. So it's like 10% of it is flawed, which I would say is a very good percentage. And then another 10% is more so less realistic. So, well, I mean, I guess if you're pulling out 100 different stunts, you are expected to make a few mistakes. So, in that sense, it was really nice. There was a lot of good scenes, and the mistakes are clearly excusable. So that's about the action, right? You're gonna get so many different types of it. This film by Canon is clearly not about its story. It's not that much about how like how much of a character John is emotionally, but more so how much of a guy he is in terms of the action that he takes. So action clearly speaks louder than words in this film because uh, if you're an like an action movie fan, well, this is this is it for you. If you're like paying $10 to go and watch this film, well, I would say it's totally worth it because um, this is it. I mean, this is as much action as you could compress into a single film and deliver in really. I think it was like what an hour and a half. And I was amazed by just how much they could fit into this film. It was fight after fight. Like you would probably have like a short window of like a scene of him like talking or just walking somewhere, or like having a cool shots of like how he just has this very classic John Wick-ish dialogue like good luck Mr. Wick, something like that, or the manager is always in, all these kinds of classic side stories, or the villain talking about how John Wick is coming, or how they want to get back at him, something simple like that, and then the action picks up once again. Now, if you guys have watched the previous films, which you should, the first film, of course, introduced us to this universe, this kind of mafia-ish world. But when it comes to this film, we get to see a lot more of it. So this time, the dog survives. Let me just tell you, he straight up hands up the dog to the desk manager at the what is this? the Continental, and then the guy, like the guy at the counter, he takes over the dog and he keeps him for the rest of the film until the very like kind of end, bitter end. And then we get to see this story kind of, of course, pick off exactly where it left off from the ending of the second film, which is basically John running away from being hunted by all the other assassins who serve the Continental, because now he is excommunicado, and that means that he cannot receive services from anything that is related to this mafia organization. So the Continental can't serve him, the Doctor can't serve him, and we get this very short scene of him visiting the Doctor at the very beginning, right after running away. He's like, I think 1 or 2 minutes left, and then the Doctor kind of patches him up, and then the Doctor forces him to shoot the Doctor in to give him flesh wounds so that it makes it look like he was forced to do it. So at least the Doctor gets to survive. Because a few scenes after that, this lady you see here, she starts arriving at different locations. They call her the adjudicator. She works for the high table, and she pays a visit to every single person who has assisted John Wick uh, while he was being hunted by the guy from the second film, the guy who hired him to kill his sister, who worked at the high table. So she comes after this guy, this Morpheus guy. I forgot his in character name, and then she also goes after the manager of the Continental. The Doctor escapes, of course, because he had flesh wounds, and then they thought that John shot him, so he's fine. But this guy and the manager gets the most of it, the brunt of it. So basically, she tells them that they have to prove their service to the Continental. And as for this guy, since he's like the king of the whispers or something, right? He's like the guy who keeps secrets and stuff. So she straight up tells him to leave his position, but he says, "No, I'm the king." They slash him up 7 slashes with a samurai sword, and he goes down. It looks like he died, but at the very ending, it turns out that somehow or other he survives, which is a very nice ending, by the way. And then after that, she goes to the manager, and then the manager basically he says that I am not willing to leave. You can do what you want, and then she takes to go to further procedures, which is to attack the Continental. So I will come to that later. She also pays a visit to one more person, which was the mafia organization that John grew up with. So we later see that John has to like get safe passage, right? So he goes to like look for this lady who was the one who apparently raised him. So we get a bit more of John Wick's backstory here, where John was apparently grew up in a kind of a as an orphan in this kind of underground mafia organization. I think they are all run by Russians mostly, and they that's how where actually he gets most of his training in his early days. His throwing moves, we get to see it because we get to see some of the students, kind of like very young kids who are growing up in this organization, also practicing those throwing moves that John uses throughout his fight sequences. So they're kind of implying that this is where he learned his martial arts. Uh, and also we get to see them training some other girls and stuff, in dancing. Very, very harsh methods of training, very rough growing up. So you kind of understand that he has adapted to this very rough lifestyle, which is why he is quite accustomed to the nature of being an assassin. So he comes to this lady very early on after one or two quick fight sequences. One was at I think this kind of souvenir shop, which had an amazing knife throwing fight sequence. The knife throwing fight sequence, I must say, I have not seen anything quite like it. It was astounding. It was fast, and it truly is something that we don't get much of these days. We don't get these long shot, fight sequences without like in a nice wide angle to see what's really happening. We always get very close up, kind of cut after cut scenes. But in this film, they stay true to the tone of having these very long shot, clear fight sequences, which is very, very satisfying to watch. It's the thing that kind of keeps you, like this very, how can I put it? It's a satisfaction that you can't quite explain. It's like when you really want that extra scoop of ice cream when you order, ice cream, and then the you pay like maybe $1 for one scoop, but then you get two scoops anyway because apparently the guy just wants to be nice to you and you haven't done anything for it. You didn't pay him for it. He doesn't want your cash. It's not promotion day or whatever. It's not late in the evening and they're trying to finish the ice cream. No, they're just being nice to you. And this was that kind of a film where all the action sequences were presented fantastic. Uh, so once again, after that first one or two action sequences, he comes to visit this lady, and this is where the pace of the film kind of slows down a bit, where they're showing more in depth about John's passageway, his background, his kind of story, what he wants to do, and then she says that he wants to go to, I think it's Casablanca. So he heads on to Casablanca and he meets up this guy. Yeah, I know he's the guy from Game of Thrones, and it turns out he runs the organization there, and he needs to ask him where to find this guy who apparently sits above the high table. So John wants to go and meet up with this really like king of all the assassin groups or something. And mind you, his contract, although issued by the Continental, is actually an international contract. So it doesn't matter which part of the world he goes to, he's still under threat. So he manages to get safe passage up to here, but here people threaten to kill him. And then this guy as well threatens to kill him, but finally decides to agree to give him allowance to meet up with the guy who stands above the high table. But just before that, he gets a hold of Halle Berry's dog, and my God, Halle Berry, she was amazing in this film, guys. Her action sequence, she had this. All right, wait, let me just get this through. So apparently he kills Halle Berry's dog, and she's very attached to her dogs. And then she looks at John and be like, "He killed my dog," and then John is like, "I feel you." And this was a nice it is actually funny, it's a relatable comedy scene, which was very nice. That's as much comedy that keeps up throughout this film, and that tone of comedy was really nice because this is a serious film, but that's the kind of comedy that we deserve to get. It's the kind of the fight action packed ish comedy, the ones that slip in through in between scenes, the one that are not forced, right? These are natural scenes that just as the sequences are going, you get to chuckle a bit, then you carry on with the intense fights. So this is more of a wow factor film because Halle Berry and John Wick had a fantastic fight scene where Halle Berry's dogs will participate in the fight. And I've never seen dogs fight together with people side by side in such a well coordinated scene before. It was something I've honestly never seen before. Like I think I have seen like a dog fight with his master before, but it's like a very short scene. But in this, these two dogs are clearly trained to fight, and they're trained to fight together with their masters. And their masters fight extremely well. The dogs fight extremely well, and you can see sometimes the dog, after biting, stays struggling to like it keeps on pulling or tugging on the person even after they're dead. And I'm not sure if this is right. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've had a friend who used to deal with dogs, and he used to tell me that sometimes after a dog bites someone, in order to protect itself, because it bites so hard, its jaw could get trapped because its teeth are stuck in the person's clothes or suit or whatever. So it takes a while for the dog to like release its grip, which is why you'll see the dog kind of like dragging bodies, even after a while they've been killed. The dog knows they're dead. The dog just can't release the grip because the jaw is stuck. But eventually they get to pull it off, and they continue fighting. So that sequence was also another amazing fight sequence. And then finally Halle Berry leads John to the desert, where he takes a really long walk to find this so-called guy above the high table, right? So this was a little bit slow paced. They're kind of slowing down the tone of the film, and this is as slow as it gets. So take it all in. You want to go for your bathroom breaks? Now is the time, because you don't really need to. It's a short film, but I mean, this is the part where it kind of slows down. After this, he meets up with the guy in the desert. It's like this Arabic guy. Apparently, he is the guy who is above the high table or something. He only lives here, and you have to like walk until you can't walk anymore, and then pass out. Then some guy will come and pick you up and take you to him. It's kind of like I mean, it's kind of like the way you expect the mystical tales of all of this unseen, unknown mafia to go, but still, it felt a bit draggy and kind of unnecessary. Because what John will do is he will make a wager to prove his loyalty to this new king of all the mafia. And what he does is he chops off his finger, which has his wedding ring on it. Uh, the mafia guy takes his wedding ring, pockets it. John loses his finger. It's a finger of his left arm, so that I guess he doesn't. It's obviously where his ring finger is, and he doesn't lose his right arm, which is what he uses mostly for shooting. But regardless, he loses a finger on his left arm, and he pledges his loyalty, which he unpledges like a few scenes after. This sequence was kind of unnecessary. It didn't really settle well into the plot. It seemed like he was going there to get stronger or get more out of it, but instead he made a wager where he kind of just lost a finger and a wedding ring, and he got so tired from all the travels. But at the end of the day, all he got to do was walk back into the Continental, in which 5 minutes later he spoke to, I think, Winston, right, the manager, and then Winston just lets him fight for the entire Continental by arming up with guns. So this is the scene where he meets up with the desk manager, who's like opening a vault. They walk in. The room is like it's like a vault inside the Continental, which is like fully filled up with the guns. He talks to the manager. Manager arms him up, and the manager tells him that he does not want to give up the Continental to this adjudicator and the high table. So he sends John Wick and everyone else he has at the Continental to defend it. So there are no trained assassins here. It's all just the trained staff of the Continental who are defending it. The only assassin here is John Wick. You also see the bad guys who come to attack the Continental, who are sent by the High Table. They are all fully armed in bulletproof vest and armor. So you see John trying to pull out these difficult stunts where he has to like kind of tug over their helmet to get a shot between their like neck area, because their helmet and their full body armor completely makes them bulletproof. So only a shot as he tugs against the helmet is the only way to get the bullet through. So you have to see him like shoot them until they go down from the impact. Then he pulls up the helmet a little bit, gets the gun between the neck and fires. So he does this to like several of them until he gets fed up, and then he runs back into this room together with the desk manager, and then the two of them pick even stronger guns, and then they go out armor piercing rounds, they say, and this literally blows up their enemies. So yeah, it's fun. It's great gunfights. It's non-stop action. It's breathtaking action. Honestly, I have not seen an action film ever like this in my entire life. I felt these long shots, these wide range, like wide view actions, the constant pace, the intensity, the music. There's even a scene where they completely drop the music while John is fighting. And you normally think that the music is what makes it awesome, but they literally drop the music and you feel the intensity of the fight. And honestly, at that part, I was just like, wow, okay, this is amazing. So yeah, after they defend the Continental successfully, the adjudicator shows up again, and she tells Winston that, oh, you were just trying to prove your loyalty that you can defend the Continental. So she's like, okay, fine, you can keep it. And then as for the guy on the left, the Whisperer guy, since he got 7 slashes, everyone thought he died, but he eventually shows up in a subway basement somewhere. And how he shows up is that the manager he makes a deal with the adjudicator to continue working at the Continental because he has served them for 40 years. And then instead, what he does is he shoots John Wick, who falls off the roof of the Continental. And we don't know if this was planned because despite John having a slightly softer landing because he falls on like a roof of the like a kind of shaded roof of one building, and then a stairs crashes into the stairs of like an apartment and then falls down. Although we don't know if it was planned, it clearly seems like an ordinary person would have died, but still uh, sustained at least terrifying injuries. Nonetheless, John makes it, and what he does is he finds his way through the subway. He gets brought there by this kind of, what do you call it? He's like a homeless guy, right? You can actually see him in the second film. John gives him a coin, and then the guy bags him and takes him to go and see um see Morpheus guy. And then he does it again. He bags him up, takes him in a trolley. This time John can't walk anything. He's just really injured. He's taken in a trolley to go and see Morpheus again. And then we finally get to see Neo and Morpheus team up to take on the bad guys once again. Because at the end of the film is basically this Whisperer guy telling him that we have to team up to go for the high table. So I honestly thought that this was the conclusion film, but it seems like it may not just be over because it's gonna now be Morpheus and Neo taking on the high table, and it's gonna probably be even more awesome than this film. And yeah, this is another wonderful fight sequence where we see these two. I believe they are Indonesians. They could be Malaysians. I'm not really sure, but I think they're Indonesians. They are showing a little bit of silat, which is a martial art which originated from Silambum, which is from India. Then it went to Indonesia, then it spread through Singapore, then it spread through Malaysia, Thailand, and a lot of these countries. So yeah, it's nice to see this short blade martial art going up against John Wick and his, kind of very quick-paced Russian throwing techniques. So yeah, it was fantastic action sequences. Yeah, this is the guy they will meet in the Middle East. He's kind of like the one above the high table or something. Oh yeah, and then this guy, right? This is the guy that's constantly hunting John throughout the film. He's the guy with the samurai sword. He works for the high table. He assists the adjudicator throughout the film. He's he was you kind of end up liking him eventually, but he is a little really irritating. Like for the most part, he's kind of irritating at the start, and then he becomes even more irritating throughout. And then he saves John because he says, "No, only I can kill John." And then he fights John and dies, in John's hands. But regardless, he gives us this very ninja-like fight scene where they kind of play with the shadows around this kind of glass mirror-like room, and it still makes up for a really good fight scene, really intense one versus one fight scene. And he does a fantastic job at it. You end up liking him as a character because uh, of how amazing they build his personality, of this kind of sense of rivalry he gives you against John. So yeah, it was nice to see this guy coming up towards it. I believe his name is Mark Dacascos. Yeah, correct. I have it in a tab. I saved it somewhere. Can't really remember. I remember seeing him act in some other films, but I can't remember what they exactly are. Um, was he like in the Iron Chef? I think he was in the Iron Chef, because in this film as well, he was like a sushi chef, and it kind of gave me that feeling like I've seen this guy being a chef before. Yeah, I think he was in the Iron Chef. So yeah, it's this guy. Anyway, it was amazing. You guys should watch this film. I'm just gonna throw up the rating over here. Give me a sec. All right, there you go. This is a 6 out of 10 film. It doesn't have much of a story. It's a very simple story, and the execution of the story as well was very bad. The entire desert sequence, which was kind of the long part, came out to no avail because it ends up he's just gonna fight them off anyway. It turned out to be something like that. So it was more of like a break for him. Kind of weird that his break was like basically walking through a desert. But regardless, that turned out to be kind of the downtime of the film, and it made no real sense. And then also Winston's loyalty is kind of mixed up. Like he's kind of John's friend, he helps John, and then now he's back to serving the high table. And then he used John to defend the Continental, and then he proved that he can defend the Continental, and then he shoots John. But like you just use John to defend the Continental. You should instead say that, yes, I have proven to you that I can defend the Continental, but I need John Wick. Or something like that. I mean, it didn't make sense why he had to shoot John in the end as well. So kind of mixed up. But I guess they just wanted to set up for him being with Morpheus now and taking on the rest of the Continental, rest of the high table, sorry. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's what they wanted. I can appreciate that. I'm really looking forward to a follow-up film. But my God, the action sequences, I've not seen anything like it ever, guys. I've never seen an entire film packed with such a variety of intense, long shot, wide frame action sequences that were so well coordinated. Despite the flaws, it's all appreciable, and you could definitely watch this at least a few times. For the sake of the action. If you just want a film, a no-brainer, this is it for you. I would have rated this film a 5 out of 10, but I given it a 6 because of Keanu Reeves. He clearly carried several films already, and I think he deserves way more. Like he deserves an actual story, a development, for his honest character, because you can really see him doing his best in these sequences. It's clearly on his face on the screen. You can see how much respect he gets as an actor as well. Uh, so it's wonderful. But I honestly hope that they actually keep building on the story, because I felt that in the first one, very little backstory. The second one, a little more backstory. The third one, they gave a lot more backstory, but the backstory just didn't give much weight to the character because it didn't really, it didn't pan out accordingly. But I hope the next one kind of gives a really well-rounded story, together with these amazing action sequences. And for me, by far, I think this is the best action film that I've watched, because I have not seen such close-up fight scenes in any other film, to be honest, that looks so realistic. If you guys have such films, do let me know in the comments, because I would really like to watch, those, because I mean these are no-brainers, but these are really fun. Honestly, it's like kind of paying to go to the circus, right? And then you get to watch something really amazing in the circus, despite you thinking that, oh, like just how good could it be? And then you get, wow, you get like to like jaw-dropping performances, and that's what this film was. Um, so yeah, it's 5 out of 10. I've given it a 6 because of Keanu Reeves. You guys can let me know your thoughts. It lacks in-depth character development. It lacks story. It lacks morale. There's no real virtue in this. Everyone is just assassins, so they're just going about their own thing. You get to learn not so much about technology. There's not so much creativity in the sense of gadgets, but there's a lot of creativity in the fight sequences. The fight with the dogs, the fight in the knife shop, most of the fights actually. The horse fight felt a bit unrealistic because people could just shoot the horse. But I guess everyone loves the horse because no one really shot the horse. But that's okay, whatever. And then there's like a motorbike fight sequence. A lot of creative things that you don't really get. Like you may get one of those in like a movie. Like you may get one of those type of fight scenes, but here we got all of them in one big cluster, and it was fantastic. Of course, we don't have an airborne fight sequence like the Mission Impossibles, but I think we may get that in the next one. So just look forward to it. Um, but regardless, yep, it is a nice movie. It's a great movie to watch. Not the best though. So it's kind of the in-betweener. It's just backed up by so much action performances by these actors and stunt actors who did so amazingly well. But it's brought down by the lack of storytelling and, some lack of logic as well. So, yep, that's it from me. Um, do let me know what you guys thought about this film. If you haven't watched it, please watch it because whatever I tell you, I clearly cannot explain to you how amazing the action actually was because that is something to behold with your eyes. And the intensity of the music and the sound as well. I just got like a downloaded like some of the soundtracks for myself. It'll be great workout music, but honestly, it's fantastic throughout. So, yep. Um, Thanks for watching. Adios.